So we're going to show you guys how to install a torsion line. Now, obviously, you're going to want to run it through the sleeve on your code 0 first. Once you've got that out, make sure that you have marked ahead of time the total length for the torsion line you need. That your sale designer can give that to you when you go through sale design to make sure that you know what that's going to be if you're installing it yourself. We do have an option where we can do it for you in production before we ship it. Just if you're curious about that, reach out and let us know. But remember to mark it with the location for the length that you need. To determine the length of your torsion line, you will want to take the provided luff measurement from your sale designer or rigger. Before marking the torsion line with the length or pre-cutting, make sure that you've taken the thimble into account. The torsion line will wrap around the thimble and back onto itself by about 12 inches. To measure and mark this, you will want to mark the top center point of the thimble on the torsion line. On the first end of the torsion line, mark a point for where the top of the thimble will start. Then lay out the thimble and roll it along the torsion line, adding about 12 inches of material after you reach the exit portion of the thimble. Make sure to mark the top center point of the thimble with tape or a marker. To measure the length of the torsion line, measure from the mark you placed on end 1 from the top center point of the thimble. Measure along the torsion line until you hit the target length. Then mark the torsion line. This mark is the top center point of the end 2 thimble. Make sure to leave enough room on the opposite side to account for the exit point of the thimble plus about 12 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the thimble and you're going to attach it right at the point that you marked so that the tip of it is there. Now grab a zip tie and you're going to run this through. So you're going to run that through and pull it tight, making sure that the middle of the thimble is right on that mark that you have. Now, something that we've figured out is there's a couple different ways to do these, but this is one of the easier ways that's more accessible to sailors to do. So you're going to start with that, and then we're going to begin to fold this down and over. And it's nice if you got a second set of hands here, so I'm going to get Dre to go ahead and run some of these zip ties through here, and you'll see what we're doing is we're just tensioning right around the thimble to try to get the whole thing nice and tight so it sits in there nicely. Now you don't want to pull these crazy tight right now, just get a bunch of them on there and then we'll start snugging them up one at a time. That way you can actually take the slack and pull it down the thimble. So now you'll see we got somebody holding the base of the torsion line tightly at the base of the thimble, and what we're going to do is we're just going to start cranking down on our zip ties. So one quick thing before we move on to the next step, don't forget to put on the heat shrink before the thimble or else it's not going to fit over. Now you'll notice one of the things here is that we've got this gap in here and it's not lined up all the way. So if you've got a wrench handy, one of the best things that you can do is tighten it down right on top of the base of that thimble. So now that that's clamped on there, you'll see it's nice and tight, and we got all our zip ties, which are all now loose. So what we're going to do is we're going to start cranking these down to tighten them up as much as possible, just to help hold it in place, make sure everything's nice and good. Now we're going to add a couple more zip ties just here to the base, just to hold the tension a little bit more. And then we're going to take our wrench off, move on to the next step. So what you're going to need for the install, and what we recommend if you have it on hand, is an X-Acto blade, the install kit, a screwdriver, a hammer, and a rubber mallet if possible. This is going to come in handy. You can manipulate it a little bit better if you have a rubber mallet. Not necessary, but is helpful, is a drill. Now these line clamps are going to come with the clamp itself, which we're going to pull up in some heat shrink, and these special screws, a little blocker, and a nail. And we'll get into why that's going to be useful in just a minute. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these little clamps and we're going to feed them onto the line. Now, they are a tight fit onto the torsion line. They're not going to come off. So if you put them on and they're on the wrong angle, you can always use a rubber mallet to knock them loose again, which is helpful. And you also want to make sure that you get the orientation right because they need to seat together. If they're a little bit off, they're not going to seat properly and you're going to have to keep taking them on and off. Now, if you get them on and they're on a little bit of a wrong angle, all you need to do in order to get them straight is take your rubber mallet and hit it right on the edge. That's going to rotate it around the torsion line just a little bit at a time so that you can then lay it flat and make sure everything's in line. Now, we've got that together and I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see the two things are seated, the two clamps are seated together. Now, we haven't put any of the cross screws through yet, so that's going to actually clamp it together. What we want to do is make sure that they're nice and flat. If they're a little bit off, you're going to strip that screw when you go to put it in, and it's not going to go back in. So now that the clamp is on there, you don't need the zap straps on the thimble anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and take those off. I'm gonna use an X-Acto. Be careful not to damage the sheath of the torsion line. If you've got snips with you, even better, go ahead and clip them off. And there you have it. The first clamp is on, the thimble is tightly in place, and we're good to go. Now, one quick little tip for you. If you have too much room between this clamp and the thimble, there's two things you can do. I recommend you take it off and try to reseat it closer because that's a little bit better for the torsion line. But if it's just a millimeter or two, you can just hit it at the base with the rubber mallet and knock it up a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and put the second clamp on. We wanna make sure that's nice and tight to the first clamp. So put it down, push it in. Again, if it goes on a little bit of an angle, all you gotta do is hit it right on the edge with a mallet or a hammer if you've got one, and then you can take it right back off. Not. Yep, you can melt it with that probably. We're gonna go ahead and pull out these screws. Now they're gonna send you this little insert. This is in case your torsion line is a smaller diameter. It goes right inside like that, and it allows it to just fill in a little bit of the space. Now we don't need it because this torsion line is pretty thick. It comes with a nail, and then it comes with these special screws as well. And you can see they have a little sharp pin on them. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use the nail through all of these slots here on the side to pierce the torsion line. Now, you gotta be really careful you don't rub it against the threads on the side because you'll damage them quite easily. But what you're gonna wanna do is line it up in the middle of the hole, take your hammer, preferably on top of some wood, and you're gonna hit it a couple times. And you're gonna see that it's in there, but it's not too tight. You can pull it right back out, you can wiggle it out. And you're gonna move on to the next one. And you're gonna rinse and repeat through all of the different holes. So now that we've driven the nail through all of the holes in order to start a hole in the torsion line for these little set screws to go in, we're gonna go ahead and put them in. So now that you've got all the screws installed and everything's nice and tight, the last thing for you to do is take your heat shrink tubing, slide it back up and over, shrink it down, and then you're good to go. Once you have finished applying the heat shrink to your torsion line, make sure to lash the head and the tack of the sail to the torsion line thimble itself.